of SpiceJet, Ajay Singh, on the return to profitability and the road ahead. Let me also ask you about the recent Twitter war with Ratan Tata. We understand that this commentary and this chatter is perhaps around the fact that we could see a decision finally being taken by the government on the civil aviation policy, which has been long pending, and a final decision on 5/20 as well. The civil aviation minister has made his point of view very clear. He believes 5/20 should go. You believe 5/20 should stay. Mr. Tata believes 5/20 is unfair to new airlines, and it's being kept in place on account of the interest of the incumbents. You know, if the civil aviation policy were to say that 5/20 is going to go, what would it mean for companies like you and Indigo?
Well, firstly, let me just clarify that we have the greatest possible respect for Mr. Tata. But we believe that, his views are, he's an interested party here, and he's clearly, his group is a shareholder.
But so are you, Mr. Singh.
That are espousing. Of course we are, and we say this openly that we are. Now, the issue really is that in terms of 5/20, airlines that exist in India today, the carriers like SpiceJet and Indigo and Go Air and Jet Airways, they have all been asked to serve for 5 years within the country and operate with 20 aircraft and fly to remote areas as a consequence of the route dispersal guidelines, and then get lucrative rights to fly abroad. Now, you are saying now that, look, we are changing this rule, and now the new carriers that come in, including airlines that are clearly foreign controlled, which, by the way, is completely against Indian law, and in fact against the law in pretty much every country around the world. For these carriers, you will change the rule and have them fly international without serving the domestic sector at all. We think that that is not fair. What is even more unfair is the fact that the draft policy suggests that existing carriers will continue to fly to these remote areas with the fleet that they have, whereas the new carriers will not be required to do so. So that is not really creating a level playing field at all. Mr. Tata is completely right. This draft policy, the policy is discriminatory. The draft policy is actually discriminatory against the existing airlines in India that have, been flying for 5 years. You must have a level playing field. Any policy that you build has to have a level playing field. Countries around the world protect their airlines and their hub airports. The US does it. Canada does it, Europe does it, the Gulf states do it, Singapore and Malaysia do it. Why is it, Shireen, that today if I was to try and set up an airline controlled by SpiceJet in the Gulf or in Malaysia or in Singapore or in the US, I would not be allowed to do so. But we are allowing people to come and do this in our country.
Well, we don't know whether we are going to allow... We don't know whether we are going to allow that to happen or not, because
we are already doing it. We are already doing it. No, sorry, Shireen, we are already doing it. Today, it's clear that AirAsia and Vistara are controlled by their foreign parent. There is no doubt about it. Which is a charge that's been denied by both Vistara as well as AirAsia, sir. So I don't want to get into the... It is an allegation which is made by their own shareholder and by their own CEO. So I don't know what denials we are talking about.
Yeah, I know, but I cannot speak on behalf of Vistara or AirAsia, but this is going to be a decision that the government will have to take sooner rather than later, because this has been a long pending one, along with the civil aviation policy, which is pending cabinet approval. But Mr. Singh, let me talk to you about SpiceJet and the road ahead and what we can expect. Give us a sense of what we should expect now in terms of network expansion, in terms of routes that you're likely to add on. What should we expect in calendar year 2016?
Well, we have already said that SpiceJet, as a low-cost carrier, believes in achieving depth rather than breadth. And so we will try and add routes within the stations where we operate currently and try not to open too many new stations. We will add frequency to the existing sectors. We will connect those stations which are within our network but which are not connected as well. So we will continue with that policy, because we believe that that helps us in reducing the cost of operations.
Just in terms of the operating environment, Mr. Singh, and what is the outlook now as far as crude is concerned? You've, of course, been the big beneficiary on account of the fall in crude prices, which has resulted in a significant fall in ATF costs. But what do you expect from here on as far as crude is concerned, and what would that mean in terms of the business?
Well, firstly, the fall in crude prices has not translated into an equivalent fall in ATF prices, because some part of that has been retained by the oil companies in India.
Yeah.
In terms of the crude prices themselves globally, it seems that for the next year or 2 years, they will remain fairly moderate. I was reading comments of Christine Lagarde today, and she seemed to suggest that for several years the oil prices are going to remain soft. Having said that, I think it's important that we use the breathing space that we have got with the fall in crude prices to try and bring down costs, which are costs other than fuel, so that even if oil prices were to go up in the future, SpiceJet would be protected against that rise because we would have reduced other costs. So we are working on that.
Okay. The last conversation you and I had, you said that you're in no hurry to try and dilute stake at this point in time or bring an investor on board because you wanted to improve the financial performance of the airline. Given the fact that you've now seen the 4th straight quarter of profits, do you feel that this is now the time for you to be talking to potential investors? Are conversations already underway? Can we see or can we expect something on that front?
I think, the company doesn't really need financing at this point of time. The SpiceJet is generating enough cash. We are profitable. We expect to remain profitable over the next several quarters, it's just that we don't need the money. So I don't really see any reason to dilute equity at this point of time.
Okay, so not looking at diluting equity. Are you looking at the market cap battle between you and your competitor? Because revenues of SpiceJet 1/3 of Indigo, market cap 1/8. We did have a chat about this the last time around, and you couldn't figure the reason for this kind of divergence. Where do you stand on this debate today?
Well, I think really that, we need to focus on improving the performance of SpiceJet, and we should let the stock market take care of itself. If we do well, they will reward us, and if we do badly, they will punish us. And they will, I think, figure out the distinction between, or the difference between the market caps of the two companies. I don't really want to comment on that.
Okay, sir. Let me ask you then, if I were to ask you about the immediate priorities that you would like to work on, as well as the short to medium-term priorities, what would those levers be that you would like to leverage at this point in time as you try and get back to where SpiceJet used to be?
Well, clearly, we need to, as I said, work on the sticky costs, the costs related to aircraft acquisition, to maintenance and engineering, to rationalization of airports and that capacity. So that's going to be key, reduction of cost. The placement of orders for new aircraft, that's going to be a key priority for the next several months. And in terms of revenue, we will keep trying to increase ancillary revenue. We'll keep trying to optimize passenger revenue and the network that SpiceJet is flying.
Mr. Singh, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18 and taking us through the road ahead for SpiceJet. 1 year in the helm of affairs at what was a very, very turbulent time for the aircraft